There comes a moment in every man's life when silence speaks louder than words, and the sight of the woman he once overlooked becomes the memory he can't escape. There comes a moment in every man's life when silence speaks louder than any words ever did. A moment when he steps into his own world and feels something is missing, something he once took for granted without ever understanding the way it held him together. It doesn't hit him like a lightning strike. It hits like a slow echo, bouncing inside him until it becomes impossible to ignore. And the truth begins with the simplest realization: your absence weighs more than your presence ever did. People assume absence is empty, hollow, quiet, but it isn't. Absence has weight. It has depth. It becomes a shadow that follows him into every room he walks into. He notices it first in the silence, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful. The kind that feels like the world has stopped breathing, a silence that used to be filled with your laughter, your voice, your little reminders, your gentle warmth. It was so easy for him to overlook the energy you brought into the smallest corners of his life. But now he walks through those corners alone, and the difference hits him like truth usually does, slow, sharp, and late. He picks up his phone without even realizing why. It's instinct, habit, muscle memory. He scrolls through his messages, and it takes him a moment to understand what he's looking for. Your name, the little spark of reassurance he used to see every morning without appreciating what it meant. The good morning texts, the check-ins, the affection. The way you always seemed to know when he was losing himself and needed someone to remind him he wasn't invisible. And now there's nothing. A blank screen with no trace of the woman who used to show up for him more than he ever showed up for himself. It's funny how he used to reply late, thinking he'd get to you eventually. He thought you'd understand. You always did. And that understanding became another thing he expected. He underestimated the responsibility of being cared for by someone who genuinely means it. He assumed you would always be there because you always were, until you weren't. And that's when the weight of absence becomes undeniable. He starts replaying moments, not because he wants to, because the mind forcefully remembers what the heart denied. He remembers the way you looked at him when he actually spoke, about the fears he never admitted to anyone else. He remembers how you listened, not judging, not impatient, not trying to fix him, just being there, fully present. He remembers the comfort of knowing someone out there cared about the small details of his soul. He remembers the laughter, the late night conversations that made him feel alive, the encouragement you gave him in ways he didn't even have the language to appreciate back then. And you know what makes it hit even harder? The world doesn't change after you leave. He does. Because everything he sees starts reminding him of you. That cafe you loved because their tea tasted like nostalgia. The street where you once stopped to help a stray animal because your heart couldn't ignore suffering. The songs you sent him late at night. The little affirmations you gave him when he doubted himself. He used to ignore them, but now each one feels like a soft punch to the chest. Psychologists say the brain registers loss before it registers love. It's ironic. It means he finally understands the depth of your value only when he no longer has access to it. And there's a reason for that. Because the human brain adapts to comfort quickly. It adjusts to warmth and assumes it will always be there. But remove that warmth, and suddenly the cold becomes unbearable. That's what your absence does. It makes the world colder. One man once said that the moment he truly felt his girlfriend was gone wasn't the day she walked away. It wasn't even the day they stopped talking. It was the first morning he woke up and realized her good morning text wasn't delayed. It wasn't coming. And that's the moment he understood she wasn't a routine. She was a blessing. And he had taken her for granted. It's always the simple things that hurt the most, the small habits, the tiny rituals. He starts noticing how quiet his life feels now, not peaceful, empty. He notices how no one checks on him the way you used to, not because he deserves it, but because not everyone loves the way you did. He realizes how your presence made every day feel manageable, even when things were falling apart. You were a calm in the storm he didn't recognize as a gift. And suddenly, he realizes something deeper, V. He never truly carried the relationship. You did. You carried the conversations. You carried the emotional responsibility. You carried the moments. You carried the growth. You carried the love. And he remembers your voice telling him you wanted partnership, not a one-way street. But he didn't understand the weight of what you were carrying until you finally put it down. That's when absence becomes heavy, because it forces him to confront the imbalance he pretended not to see. He begins to understand why you stopped reminding him of things, why you stopped repeating yourself, why your messages became shorter and shorter, not out of anger, but exhaustion. A woman's silence is rarely sudden. It's the final language she speaks when she has said everything she could in every other language known to her. He looks back now and sees the signs he ignored, the moments he dismissed, the times you tried to tell him what you needed, and he treated it as drama instead of vulnerability. He remembers the last conversation you had, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The way you went quiet. The way your eyes softened instead of hardening. The way you released him not with anger, but with acceptance, because you were done teaching someone how to love you. There's a kind of pain men don't talk about. The pain of realizing too late. The pain of knowing they had something rare and didn't protect it. The pain of having to face themselves without the woman who once made them feel like they were enough. He feels that now it's not punishment, it's clarity, and clarity can break a man if it arrives too late. Days pass, maybe weeks, maybe months. People tell him to move on, but they don't understand that he isn't mourning the relationship. He's mourning the version of himself he could have become with you beside him. He's mourning the softness you brought out in him, the patience, the hope, the belief in moments. It wasn't just love he lost. It was the opportunity to be better. And nothing haunts a man more than a missed opportunity to grow with a woman who was willing to help him rise. Absence is a strange teacher. It shows him the weight of your presence, the impact of your love, the power of your kindness, the strength it took for you to walk away. He finally sees that your presence wasn't noise, it was grounding. Your support wasn't a favor, it was devotion. Your patience wasn't weakness, it was emotional intelligence. And your leaving wasn't betrayal, it was self-respect. One day, he sits alone at a table meant for two. He orders silence instead of coffee. He looks around and realizes he doesn't want just anyone to sit across from him. He wants the woman who understood him better than he understood himself. The woman he thought would wait forever. The woman whose presence felt effortless until she was gone. And he finally whispers the truth he denied for so long. Your absence isn't empty. It is everything he didn't appreciate, everything he didn't honor, everything he lost. And he carries that weight now, every day, in every moment, understanding the simplest, hardest truth. Your presence was light. Your absence is gravity. There's a moment in a man's life when memory stops being a collection of images and starts becoming a mirror. A mirror that shows him not what happened, but what he lost. And the moment it truly hits him isn't when he remembers what you looked like, or the way you smiled, or the way you stood beside him on the good days. It's when he remembers the way you made him feel, because feelings linger long after faces fade, long after voices quiet, long after routines dissolve, and the feeling he remembers the most, the one that rises again and again, is the sense of safety he had when he was with you. Not the kind of safety created by walls or locks or distance, but the kind that comes from a soul recognizing another soul and finally exhaling. It's the safety born from acceptance, not perfection. He remembers the way you made room for him in your world without asking him to be anything other than who he was. That kind of emotional safety is rare enough that he didn't see it while it was right in front of him, but unforgettable enough that now, even when you're gone, it lives inside him like a soft ache. He starts remembering the smallest things first, the quiet moments, the in-between spaces, The times he told you something he had never said out loud before, and the way you didn't flinch, didn't judge, didn't try to fix him. You just listened. Fully. Present. Grounded. It's strange how he used to take that for granted, how he used to believe that being listened to was normal. He didn't know that listening with compassion was a language not everyone spoke. He didn't realize how rare it was to be understood without explanation, to be accepted without performance. He used to open up to you without even noticing he was doing it. That's how natural it felt. He could talk about his fears, his insecurities, his quiet battles, and you would hold his words gently, as if they were delicate truths that deserved care. That feeling of being able to let his guard down was something he didn't understand the value of until life placed him in the company of people who didn't offer that grace. People who listened to reply, not to understand. People who heard his words but not his heart. And that's when memory hits him differently. He begins to understand that you weren't just someone he loved. You were the place where his tired spirit rested. You were the calm he didn't know he needed. You were the softness he didn't think he deserved. You were the reminder that love wasn't supposed to hurt, confuse, or drain. It was supposed to feel like coming home after a long day, quiet, safe, unquestioning. He remembers the way you looked at him when he spoke, the softness in your eyes, the patience in your silence, the way you seemed to see the man he was trying to become, not just the man he was struggling to be. And that memory stings because now, when he speaks, he feels the difference. He feels the shift. He feels how other people listen differently, how they judge quickly, how they misunderstand easily, how they turn his vulnerabilities into liabilities. He didn't realize it back then, but he was emotionally spoiled by your presence. And now, without you, everything feels harder. Conversations feel shallower. Interactions feel heavier. He realizes he is careful now, too careful, measuring his words, guarding his emotions, protecting parts of himself he freely gave to you because he trusted you in a way he didn't trust anyone else. He didn't have to explain himself to you. He didn't have to hide. You saw him fully with all his imperfections and failures, and you didn't step back. You stepped closer. There's a kind of memory that doesn't fade with time. It deepens. And as he moves through his life, meeting new people, having new conversations, building new connections, he notices the emptiness they leave behind. Not because they're bad, but because they don't offer what you offered without effort. They don't make him feel known. They don't make him feel grounded. They don't look at him the way you did, with a softness that said, "You matter here, you're safe here." Real emotional safety is a rare space, a space where someone can put down the emotional weight they carry and rest. He didn't understand that being understood was a form of love, a deep one, a powerful one, a kind that shapes a man quietly, subtly, until he becomes someone softer without knowing why. You were shaping him with your presence, your patience, your empathy, all the things he thought were normal until he experienced the world without them. He remembers the way you could read him without words. You knew when he was overwhelmed, even when he smiled. You knew when he needed silence more than advice. You knew when he needed reassurance, even though he acted strong. You knew him in a way that wasn't invasive, it was intuitive. And now he tries to explain himself to people who don't hear him. He tries to open up, only to be misunderstood or minimized. And the contrast feels like loss. One day, he sits across from someone new, and the realization hits him in a quiet, crushing way. He's laughing, joking, talking, but he feels unseen. He feels like he's performing. He feels like he's wearing a version of himself instead of being himself. And that's when he remembers you. Not because he misses the past, but because he finally understands the difference between being tolerated and being understood. Understanding is a kind of love, a deeper kind, one that doesn't need explanations or justifications. One that says, "I get you," even when you don't have the words. And he remembers how effortlessly you gave him that gift. He thinks back to the nights when he opened up about things he never intended to share, The dreams he abandoned, the mistakes he regretted, the fears he carried. You didn't shrink away from his shadows. You didn't judge the darker truths. You welcomed them with the same compassion you welcomed his strengths. And now, when he sits in silence with people who only want the highlight reel of his life, he feels the weight of losing someone who accepted his whole story. He remembers how you made him feel safe in a world that constantly demanded he be strong, how you reminded him that strength wasn't the absence of vulnerability, it was the courage to reveal it. You made him believe he didn't have to be perfect to be loved. You made him believe he was enough, even on the days when he wasn't proud of himself. And that feeling, the feeling of being enough, is what he misses the most. Time passes, people enter and leave, routines change, life keeps moving. But the feeling remains, the memory of being seen fully without being asked to shrink or pretend. The memory of being understood without needing to justify his heart. The memory of having a safe place to fall without fear of being hurt. He starts to realize that you weren't just someone in his life. You were a chapter that defined him. A chapter where he felt whole, not because life was perfect, but because he had someone who understood the language of his soul. And now, as he navigates the world without you, he carries a truth he never expected to hold so tightly. He remembers the way you made him feel, safe, seen, understood, and nothing else feels the same. Life has a way of revealing truth in the most unexpected moments. Not during celebrations, not during the high points, not when everything is smooth and effortless. Life speaks its deepest lessons in the quiet aftermath of a fall, in the moments when everything a man thought he could control slips straight through his hands. And when life tests him, when the world becomes heavy, when his plans crumble, when people he trusted turn their backs, when he finds himself standing at the bottom of a valley he never saw coming, that is when he begins to remember. Not the crowds, not the temporary companions, not the people who clapped for him when things were easy. He remembers the one person who stood by him when he had nothing to offer except his raw, imperfect self. He remembers you. It doesn't begin dramatically. It begins with something small, a setback he didn't expect, a problem that grows heavier by the day, the kind of test life gives not to punish but to awaken. Maybe he loses a job. Maybe a project fails. Maybe a plan he was certain about collapses overnight. Or maybe he wakes up one morning and realizes he's emotionally exhausted in ways he's been avoiding. And the moment he begins to struggle, he looks around for stability, the stability he assumed would always be there, and sees how quickly people disappear when the lights dim. It's strange how people say they'll be there, yet vanish the minute he stops being strong. But the human heart doesn't forget the ones who stayed. And as he battles through uncertainty, your face begins to surface in his memory, not as nostalgia, but as clarity. He remembers the nights you sat beside him when he felt overwhelmed, the way you didn't try to fix him, but supported him until he found his own strength. He remembers how you stood with him when he doubted himself, when he wasn't at his best, when he wasn't easy to love. You weren't just present, you were constant. There's a moment every man faces when the world grows heavy and the noise becomes unbearable. In that silence, he begins to himself questions he never asked when he was distracted by comfort. Questions about loyalty, about effort, about love, about the people who showed up and the ones who didn't. And the more he reflects, the clearer the truth becomes you were the one who stood by him, not because life was easy, but because you cared, not for advantage, not for praise, but out of genuine loyalty. He remembers the way you believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. He remembers the mornings when he woke up discouraged, and you gently reminded him that his failures didn't define him. He remembers the way you celebrated his small victories, the way you saw potential in him when all he saw was pressure. Those memories hit him harder now because he sees the difference between real support and convenient support. Life tests everyone. But when it tests him, it strips away illusions and leaves only truth. And the truth is that you were the backbone he didn't appreciate while he had it. You were the quiet strength behind his confidence. You were the emotional shelter he stood under during storms he didn't even acknowledge. When he felt lost, you guided him. When he was tired, you lifted him. When he was broken, you didn't walk away. You stayed long enough to hand him his courage back. Now, as he faces hardship alone or with people who don't carry the same depth, he begins to compare without meaning to. He remembers how you checked on him when he was stressed, how you encouraged him when his dreams looked impossible, how you reminded him of his worth when life made him feel small. And suddenly, he understands that kindness isn't just a personality trait, it's a lifeline, one he no longer has. Maybe something happens that shakes him deeply, a betrayal from a friend he trusted too much, a loved one walking away, a mistake he can't undo, a financial burden he didn't prepare for, a moment of failure that strips him of pride. Life is full of these tests. They come without warning and hit harder when he thinks he's finally stable. And in those moments, when his world is unsteady, the truth of who truly cared becomes undeniable. He begins to understand the difference between presence and loyalty. Many people were present when life was good, when he was confident, when he was thriving. But you were loyal when he was uncertain, insecure, frustrated, or lost. You stayed during the chapters he wasn't proud of. You stayed even when he pushed you away. You stayed because you loved him in a way that wasn't dependent on circumstance. And now, as life challenges him, he realizes how deeply he depended on your strength without ever acknowledging it. He remembers how he used to come to you with stress, with disappointment, with confusion, and how you always had a way of calming the storm inside him. You knew exactly how to speak to his spirit, not his ego. You offered stability without demanding anything in return. Not many people in this world love like that. He begins replaying moments he once brushed aside, like the night he told you he didn't know what he was doing with his life, and you didn't judge him. You held his fear with kindness, or the times he was short-tempered or distant because he was overwhelmed, and you didn't attack him, you tried to understand him, or the days he felt like a failure, and you reminded him he was still capable of building the future he wanted. These moments suddenly feel heavier now, weighted with meaning, weighted with regret, weighted with awareness. There's something about being tested by life that makes a man reflect on the people who helped him carry his burdens. And the irony is this: life tests him at the exact moment when you're no longer there to help him through it. Now he has to feel the weight alone. And through that loneliness, he begins to see your worth clearly for the first time. He realizes that the support you gave him wasn't common. It wasn't ordinary. It wasn't replaceable. It came from a depth of understanding and compassion that most people don't have. He realizes that no one else has shown up for him in the way you did, consistently, selflessly, wholeheartedly. Some nights, when he thinks about where he is and where he could have been, his mind drifts back to the moments when you stood by him even though he had nothing to give. And a truth rises inside him, a truth he once ignored. You saw him as someone worthy of support, even when he couldn't see himself that way. And that thought stays with him. It doesn't fade. It follows him into every difficult moment, every challenge, every setback, every time life knocks him down again. Because when he tries to stand back up, he realizes he misses the steady hand that used to help him rise. He begins to understand that support isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistency, patience, presence, and you embodied all three. You were a safe space in a world that demanded he be strong. You were the one person who believed in him without conditions. You were a calm voice in the chaos. And now, as he faces the hardest chapters of his life, he remembers who stood beside him when he didn't deserve it. Life is testing him, and in every test, in every moment of uncertainty, your memory rises as the one truth he can't escape. You were the one who stayed, the one who believed, the one who supported, the one who cared when no one else did. And the realization hits him with a depth he can't ignore. There comes a moment in every man's journey when he looks back at the woman he once had close to him and realizes she has become someone he barely recognizes, not because she changed into a different person, but because she finally became the version of herself she was never allowed to be beside him. And the first time he sees you glowing without him, something inside him twists in a way he doesn't understand at first. It's not grief, not regret, not yet. It's ego, pure, unfiltered ego, because he always assumed you'd struggle without him, not intentionally, not out of arrogance, but because he believed he was more necessary to your life than he actually was. He thought you needed his reassurance, his validation, his presence, his approval, the little breadcrumbs of attention he used to toss your way. He assumed your world revolved around him, even if you never said it, even if you never acted like it. He convinced himself that you wouldn't know how to rebuild, how to stand tall, how to rise again. So when he sees you now, stronger, steadier, braver, more radiant, the shock hits him before the truth does. Maybe he sees a picture of you smiling, a real smile, the kind he hasn't seen in years, because somewhere along the journey, you stopped smiling like that around him. Maybe he hears from someone that you're doing well, that you're glowing, that you're thriving. Maybe he crosses paths with you unexpectedly and sees the calm confidence in your eyes, the peace in your posture, the softness that has returned to your spirit now that you're no longer carrying the emotional weight he used to place on you. And for a moment, his ego panics, because the story he wrote in his mind, the story where you'd be lost without him, fractures instantly, because all the excuses he told himself about why the relationship ended crumble in one quiet second. Because he sees with his own eyes that you didn't just move on, you leveled up. At first, it bothers him, more than he wants to admit. He wonders how you could look so alive when he expected you to feel empty. He wonders how you found strength when he assumed you would fall apart. He wonders how you learned to take care of yourself so beautifully when he believed you couldn't survive without his presence. What he doesn't understand in that moment is that the glow he sees now is the glow you dimmed for him. You dimmed your light to make him comfortable. You silenced parts of yourself to avoid conflict. You held back your joy to protect his insecurity. You lowered your standards to keep the peace. You sacrificed pieces of yourself to keep the relationship intact. So the glow he sees now, the glow that unsettles him, is not something new. It's something that was always inside you, finally freed the moment you walked away from the version of yourself that shrank to make him feel big enough. As the days pass, the initial sting of ego transforms into a quieter, deeper ache. Because ego hurts on the surface, but the heart hurts at the core. And when the truth settles inside him, the pain shifts from, "How dare she live without me?" to, "How did I ever let her go?" He begins to understand that your glow is not meant to offend him. It's not meant to make him jealous. It's not meant to make him feel small. It's simply the natural result of healing, the kind of healing you were never able to fully experience while loving him. He remembers how you used to pour yourself into the relationship, how you gave, compromised, tried, forgave, and stayed long after your heart whispered that you were tired. He remembers the versions of you that were exhausted, anxious, uncertain, and yet desperately committed. He remembers the days when your light flickered but didn't go out, even when he didn't do his part to protect it. And now, watching you glow, he finally realizes how much of yourself you were giving just to hold everything together. That's when it hits his heart. Not quickly, not dramatically, slowly, like water seeping into cracks he didn't know existed. He starts to feel something he hasn't felt in a long time, the loss of the woman you were, the woman he didn't appreciate, the woman he thought would always be there. And this time, he doesn't see you through the eyes of ownership or expectation or pride. He sees you through the eyes of someone who finally understands what he pushed away. Someone who finally understands what he mishandled. Someone who finally understands the difference between "she'll come back" and "she's gone for good." The glow you carry now is the glow of freedom, the glow of peace, the glow of self-respect reclaimed, the glow of a woman who knows her worth, not because someone reminded her, but because she finally remembered it herself. He starts noticing that you don't react to him anymore. You don't chase, explain, defend, or justify. You don't shrink or break or plead the way he secretly believed you would. You stand tall, not out of revenge, but out of growth. And that's what hits him hardest. Because it would be easier for him if you were angry, easier if you were bitter, easier if you were jealous, easier if you seemed miserable without him. But you're not. You're calm. And calmness is the one thing he never expected from you once you left. He expected cries, arguments, blame, chaos, the things people imagine when they think of heartbreak. But what he sees instead is a woman who healed herself so deeply that even the emotional scars he left on you no longer define you. And in that realization, something shifts. He begins to understand that your glow isn't meant for him. It isn't a message or a warning or a punishment. It's simply the reflection of a woman who chose herself. Maybe he tries to distract himself, ignoring the H that grows each time he sees how far you've come. Maybe he tries to convince himself that he's fine. Maybe he tries to drown the truth in noise, in people, in busyness. But the heart is stubborn. It remembers what the mind tries to deny. And every time he sees your glow, in person or online, through someone else's words or a chance encounter, a quiet voice whispers inside him, "She's better without you. She's brighter without you. She's happier without you." And he realizes it's true. It's not that he hates your glow. It's that he knows he didn't protect it when he had the chance. You were glowing then too, just softer, quieter, more hesitant. And instead of nurturing that light, he overshadowed it with his insecurity, his inconsistency, his lack of emotional presence. Now he sees what he missed, what he dismissed, what he failed to water. You. Not the version of you that loved him endlessly, but the version of you that loves yourself enough to walk away. And that is the moment the ego fades and the heart finally feels its weight. Because nothing teaches a man harder than seeing a woman he once took for granted become a woman he cannot reach anymore. A woman who grew beyond him, a woman who healed without him, a woman who shines not to spite him, but because she chose joy over pain. He sees you glowing, he feels the truth, and for the first time, he understands what he lost. There comes a point in a man's life when the truth catches up to him, not in anger, not in chaos, but in quiet clarity. A truth so simple and so heavy that it changes the way he sees everything. He looks back and realizes that your absence weighs more than your presence ever did. He remembers the way you made him feel safe, seen, understood in a way he never appreciated when he had it. He faces life's storms, and suddenly your strength, your loyalty, your patience, they echo louder than the noise around him. He sees you glowing without him, stepping into your own power, and it hits a place inside him he wasn't prepared for. At first his pride cracks, then his heart does, and in that moment, he finally understands the reality he denied for so long. You were the only woman who ever stood with him without asking for applause, the only one who stayed when life got messy, the only one who gave without keeping score. But here's the part that matters most. This story isn't about his realization, it's about your evolution. It's about how losing you wasn't just a lesson for him, it was a rebirth for you. It's about the way you walked away not out of anger, but out of self-respect. It's about how you chose growth over chaos, peace over confusion, and dignity over being taken for granted. And in doing so, you didn't just change your life, you changed the way he will move through the rest of his. Because a man never forgets the woman who loved him with depth, and he never fully recovers from losing her. That truth will stay with him. But your truth is stronger. You learned that real love doesn't demand that you shrink yourself. It asks you to rise. It asks you to choose yourself first. And when you did, you became the version of yourself you were always meant to be. So if you're listening to this thinking about someone who didn't see your value in time, Let this be the reminder you need. Their realization is not your responsibility. Their regret is not your burden. Your life continues. Your story expands, and every step you take forward is proof that you were never the one who was lacking. You were the one who was rare, and the rarest souls are always recognized, sometimes too late, but always eventually, and that's enough.